Well, I guess I didn't think I'd be resurrecting this old video series after so long. But I guess considering the subject matter, and because it was this series that caught the attention of a certain someone way back in the day, I guess really I don't see a better fit for it. But anyways, well, hey everyone, Art Shadow here, and welcome to something that is completely different. Yes, well, so I guess after some encouragement and after some few people made it kind of aware that there was kind of a demand for this sort of video, I figured I'd go ahead and make it. For simplicity's man, my tongue has already stopped working and we're barely not even 5 minutes into the video. But anyways, well, so for simplicity's sake, this is probably going to be something like a mini-series. That way, for anyone who does want to sit down and go through this whole video spiel, it doesn't take like 3 hours or something. And because the subject matter is one that is very personal to me, and there are some points in which I probably feel like I might need to take breaks and maybe emotionally prepare myself. But anyway, so what is the subject matter? Well, I guess if you haven't already read the title, I am going to be talking about a certain woman by the name of Madeline, or Maddie as she told me that I could call her. So, I guess the short version of this is that she was someone that I met long ago, and she was a major influence on my videos. She more or less taught me a lot of editing techniques, a lot of which I still use in my own videos. And in a sense, you could say that this channel, Ardred Shadow, mainly exists because she kind of inspired me in a way. I mean, granted, I maybe would have done this eventually, but she was really the main motivating factor here. And I'll get to that eventually. But I guess what better place to start than maybe the beginning, or maybe a little bit before the beginning. So I guess let's set a preface here. The year is 2006. I'm still going through school. I feel I'm kind of bullied a lot. I lost my grandmother, who meant the world to me and who pretty much made me into the person I am today, and my safe haven in a sense. A lot of my friends had abandoned me because they thought that they were too good to be around me and I didn't fit in with them. Anytime I tried to sit with them at lunch, they'd be like, "Go away, Daniel." I'm like, okay, fine, geez, I'll just sit by myself, which I usually ended up doing. And in that time, I discovered, and I'm still kind of embarrassed about this, but it was in that year that I became a fan of Cascada, the one who made the Every Time We Touch song. I'm pretty sure you know the one. If you don't know the song, then there's a good chance you're probably at least familiar with the meme surrounding the song. But anyway, so I eventually became a fan of that group as we kind of move along to 2007, 2008. I eventually got the CDs. When I first heard the song, I didn't even know what the group was called or that it even was a group. I just thought it was the one lady singing in it. And I guess from then on, like 2008, I was, fully cemented as a fan of Cascada. I got the second album, and then in 2009 I would get the first album, and then the third album, which was the newest one at the time. Okay, and well, I guess that brings us to 2009, in which things were kind of better for me. I wasn't really bullied a whole lot, and I had some pretty good friends. I still felt kind of like a social outcast just because a lot of people still kind of viewed me as being strange and weird. Which is why, for those of you who are fans of my DDLC videos, you'll know that that's kind of why I gravitate towards Yuri a lot, because in that sense she was also kind of the social outcast, and in some mods she's even bullied a lot because she's different. But then, like in the original DDLC, when she said that she just learned to eventually embrace her own weirdness, I mean, I kind of just did that as well, because for a time I just tried to kind of hide who I was, and I hated it. I hated that I wasn't able to fully express who I was. I felt like I was trying to be something that I wasn't, and I was miserable. So I eventually just said, well, screw that. I'd rather be miserable being myself than trying to be something I'm not and still be miserable. Because, I mean, either way, yeah, sure, I'll be kind of unhappy, but at least I'll be unhappy in a way where I'll be who I am. I don't have to feel like I'm pretending to be something I'm not. Which, unironically, my aunt told me that sometimes you just have to do that, whether you like it or not, and maybe to some extent, probably, but at least me being me, I don't want to go through every single day trying to pretend that I'm something I'm not in that sense. Anyway, so around this time in 2008 was when I established myself as Shuttle Bionics on YouTube. At that time, I was part of the BioTube community, which was another name for people who would make Bionicle related videos. I wasn't that popular, but I mean, I still did it just because I had fun with it. Although I unironically kind of got my big break when a guy by the name of Edict Arts kind of gave me a shout out, and he loved a lot of my videos. Especially some where I kind of would react or respond to some of the stuff he would do. And he even favorited one of my videos before I unfortunately had to take everything down, of me doing basically just me talking in an Arnold Schwarzenegger voice all the time, almost like 50% of the time. But anyway, so I was active in the BioTube community back then. I was also kind of getting introduced to a lot of different Cascada tubers out there. Some people who would kind of make Cascada related videos. Like one that I remember by the name of Crystal Shannon, who would make like her own sort of music videos set to songs of Cascada that did not have any. And I liked her stuff. And there were a few that would post like interviews and live performances and all that. But then eventually one channel by the name of Haley Meadows caught my eye. Mostly because this person posted like a lot of remixes of Cascada songs. And as weird as it sounds, I kind of liked that. Even though like some of them were kind of sped up or slowed down or whatever, kind of like how you might define present day nightcore. You know, I still kind of like the sound of it, and I remember in the comments she responded to someone, and well, I eventually learned that it was a girl, but that in the sense that she kind of did it for fun and also to kind of prove that Natalie's vocals were still amazing no matter the pitch or tempo. And FYI, well, the singer of Cascada is named Natalie Horler, so. And it was around that time when I did find out, like, oh, okay, well, I guess that makes sense. Cascada, Natalie Horler, she's the lead singer of Cascada, so she's basically just the face of the group. A lot of people didn't really know that, but she seemed to kind of be on top of things, and she knew that as well. I remember there were some times where I would kind of clumsily respond or comment on how I liked some of the remixes she posted. She never really replied to me, but I mean, I wasn't really expecting her to, and nor did I ever ask for her to reply to me. I just wanted to be, well, nice and encourage her to keep up the work she does because I liked it. But then a few months later or so, the Haley Meadows account was terminated. And this was due to this sort of copyright debacle that had been going on with YouTube for a while. And yeah, unfortunately, it seemed as though the channel kind of fell under fire since she was posting all these songs, and I guess YouTube didn't like that. In addition to some Cascada songs, I could have sworn that she posted a Selena Gomez song, but, well, most of you all know how I feel about Selena Gomez, so I didn't really pay any mind to it, but she did have other artists on there aside from Cascada, but that was really like her main thing on there. So when the channel kind of went down, as well as a few other Cascada tuber channels, well, understandably, it kind of made me sad because I liked that stuff, and now I can't watch or listen to any of it anymore. So as Shadow Bionics, and when I had the Shadow Soapbox in full swing as like my sort of pseudo blog series, I paid tribute to a lot of these channels, especially I specifically mentioned Haley Meadows because that one kind of made me sad the most. And that was that. Although, at least nothing really happened for a while until I noticed one day I had a new subscriber by the name of XX Larsa Solidor XX. That didn't really, like, at least when I saw that, I'm like, okay, sure. And then I went through the channel and I'm like, oh, okay, well, this person also likes Final Fantasy, and I think it seems like they like Cascada and even Avril Lavigne as well. Okay, cool. And it was at the point that eventually I realized, like, man, how stupid I was. Because, well, you'll see why, but so eventually, I don't remember what I was going through, but out of curiosity, I went through that channel again, and I found that they had a Blogspot link. And I just figured, okay, well, maybe I'll check it out. And I just noticed, like, oh wow, they talk about Cascada a lot, like all these sorts of different things and tidbits and whatever. Eventually, one day I went through the Blogspot again, and I found a post that specifically mentioned Shadow Bionics. And I was here like, what? Like, okay, why is this person talking about me? Why am I being noticed by this person? And then that's when I read through the post and I saw that, oh, well, ding 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 ding, Haley Meadows is Larsa Solidor. I'm like, well, what an idiot I am. So, one of the first things I did, well, I did actually comment on a few of her posts on her Blogspot, kind of, sort of, trying to engage in the conversation that she posed in some of her topics. I went to her channel and I'm like, when you could leave channel comments and whatever, I was basically like, please excuse me for being stupid. I'm so sorry. I didn't realize that you were the same person, and thank you for your support and whatever, and I'm truly honored that you've acknowledged me that much. She didn't really say anything. And once again, I didn't expect her to, especially since I kind of felt like a huge idiot. Like, at least in my head, I imagine that she probably did think I was an idiot for kind of, like, overlooking this and not following up with her sooner. And, well, so like I said, she didn't really respond back to me in any form, not even on her Blogspot, which I did keep up with on a regular basis. I even made my own Blogspot for the Shadow Soapbox, which I eventually had to take down just because But once again, things were getting kind of screwy, and I just didn't feel like running it anymore. So, what year was this? I want to say maybe 2010. Yeah, let's say 2010, when I first joined DeviantArt. After some friends of mine kind of persuaded me to finally do it, I joined DeviantArt. At that point, I didn't really have a lot going on with that profile. I used to post like some photography shots I took, maybe some few like custom Lego Bionicle pieces I would make, especially like custom Kanohi masks. And in 2006, I did get into writing, so come 2010, I did kind of transfer some of my writing over to DeviantArt. But otherwise, I mean, I didn't really do a whole lot. In addition to that, though, well, I guess strike that, I did post a lot of like stupid memes back then, which, well, you can't find them anymore now, since apparently DeviantArt doesn't like memes very much. But one day, well, I decided... I forgot what really possessed me to do this, but then I figured... like, I wonder if there was any Cascada fan art out there. And sure enough, I found some. Some that I would rather never ever have to see again in my life, and I have hinted at this to a few people on Discord. But then there was some that did kind of catch my eye, like these sort of custom CD covers. And there was also this one kind of edit of Natalie and Spira from Final Fantasy X that was kind of funny. And then I looked at who made all this stuff, and can you guess who it was? If you said Larsa Solidor, you were right. So immediately I kind of went like, oh wow, she's on here as well. And then so I went onto her profile, and sure enough, I mean, I saw the CD covers, as well as like some of her little edits, and then some of her artwork. She did actually post some of this artwork on her blogspot as well, so sure enough, I mean, I did recognize that, okay, yes, this is the same person. And, well, then came probably not my finest hour, but when I tried to kind of reach out to her and sort of introduce myself, and oh my god, I commented somewhere, I think, either on her actual artist profile or some of her custom CD covers. Well, okay, no, well, I did comment on both of those things, but on the CD covers, I would basically kind of post something like, I really like how you did this, like, I especially like the editing that you did on it, and whatever, you know, like, legit, like me saying that I really love what you've done here. It looks really good, and I can definitely appreciate the time and effort that you put into this. Compared to the, hi, I'm Shadow Bionics from YouTube. I'm not sure if you remember me, but I remember you as Haley Meadows, and I really liked your stuff, and I'm glad to see that you're on DeviantArt as well, and I'm a big fan of what you're posting here, and I hope to see more from you, and, like, I don't exactly remember what I did, but I just remembered that after I finished saying all that, I felt like a total idiot. Like, oh, what is wrong with me? I probably came off like some kind of stuttering, nervous fool who kept running their mouth on, and I wasn't sure if, oh great, well, is she really gonna think that I'm an annoying idiot this time? No, sure enough, she actually didn't. And, well, I don't quite know what eventually happened, but I guess one day she just kind of gave me a chance, in a sense, and we just started talking more and more. We would kind of converse about Cascada for a while, like certain things that we liked, our favorite songs. And then eventually we kind of started moving into things about our personal lives a little bit, sharing little things about ourselves. Kind of like how eventually I learned how she was from the United Kingdom, and a little bit about the area that she lived in that had like this sort of beautiful lake and so much green grass that you could see, compared to where I live, where there's just sand and not much grass to speak of. At least not as much as where she lived. And some of the pictures that she would post of her own photography that I really liked. And let's see what else. Well, eventually I guess you could say that we kind of grew to have like this sense of mutual trust and respect for each other. And well, at that point, she was still continuing on with her artwork. I was still continuing on with my writing and my photography every once in a while. I didn't really do a whole lot. I kind of stopped with custom masks for a while since I really didn't have like too many mask ideas or masks to work with. Eventually, though, I did kind of move into trying to do some Cascada artwork like she did, but I wasn't quite sure how to do it. I just thought to myself, well, I really like how she does it, and, I kind of want to sort of contribute more to the fandom as well, which, depending on how much later I address this, you'll see that that was quite a big mistake. And considering that I've wanted to try to get into drawing for the longest time, I just don't know how to do it. Around that time, I started off kind of doing like these drawings of Mario and Luigi that a lot of my friends liked. Some people even wanted me to kind of duplicate those drawings for them, which at that time I would happily do, since, well, back then, right now, considering I don't have as much time for that anymore, back then I was more than happy to, so I would gladly do that. But then one day, well, I kind of got this idea, kind of looking through some of her artwork again, as well as studying some various cartoony artwork, especially like that of Dexter's Laboratory, one of my favorite shows growing up. And I kind of thought, well, considering Maddie kind of specializes, or well, at this point, Larsa, because she actually never told me her name at that point. Considering that she specializes in like more realistic pieces, what if I were to try something a little more cartoonish and maybe unexpected from me? And that was how the character that I christened Toon Natalie was born. Essentially like this sort of cartoonish caricature of Natalie Horler. And, well, I guess for the most part, I would say that people liked her. She didn't really get much attention. Well, the first drawing I ever made of her didn't really get that much attention on DeviantArt. But, I mean, that didn't really matter to me much. I know a lot of my friends in school kind of liked this idea that I was kind of getting into drawing, and some people were even encouraging me to, share off my artwork some more. I was still kind of shy at that point, so I didn't exactly do that, but by the end of my time in school, I bet some people could tell you that they might remember me walking around with a binder of all my drawings that I had ever done, because it eventually got to a point where I was trying to think of new drawing ideas every day, and whenever I had new ideas for drawings, I would just bust out my binder and get to work on it in my free time. I do remember that eventually Larsa, as I'm gonna call her until I did find out her name, which was that's kind of a funny story in itself, but anyways. I remember that she did actually mention to me that she liked the idea behind Toon Natalie, and that she was kind of cute in her own way. Around that point, I eventually kind of started to experiment more with how I drew Toon Natalie, eventually kind of improving and getting better at it. Well, in a sense, some of those drawings actually inspired her to kind of sort of make a Toon Natalie drawings of her own, a lot of which were pretty good. And I remember that we even made we both made the same outfit for her from when she was at the 2009, 2010, whatever year that was, VMAs. So she drew a drawing of her in that outfit, and then I did as well. And it was just kind of cool to see what we both came up with. Hers was a little more stylized than mine was. Mine was a bit more simplified, which was kind of sort of what I stuck to with mine, to kind of keep that sort of cartoony feel to her without trying to make things too overly complicated on myself, especially since I was still kind of learning at that time. And well, and then I guess eventually she did kind of start paying more attention to my artwork, and she was a bit more encouraging about it, and eventually she would request certain drawings of Toon Natalie, which I was more than happy to make for her, since at that point I considered her to be one of my best friends. Considering how I would look forward to the time we would spend talking to each other, which, I kid you not, would probably have gone on for hours and hours on end, I just enjoyed every moment of it. And considering how she was sort of one of my big inspirations, I would gladly have done as many drawings as she would have liked. In our talks, she would eventually kind of share some editing techniques that she had in her original videos, both as Haley Meadows and as Larsa Solidor. She still made videos as Larsa Solidor, but they were mostly Final Fantasy AMV sort of videos. Some of them used music from Cascada, of course, but also Avril Lavigne and Kodakumi, who I learned were three of her favorite artists at the time, with Lady Gaga actually being kind of another one that she liked as well. Well, as I mentioned, on the side, I did kind of learn a lot about her, her taste in music, and some sort of little silly things that she kind of shared about her and her friends, and as well as one thing that kind of made me feel sort of bad was how she mentioned that she had to deal with a lot of idiot guys in her school, and I was like, oh, well, that's too bad. I mean, what do they, are they mean to you? What do they do? And I'm like, oh no, they're just kind of idiots. Luckily, they don't notice me because they think I'm too much of a nerd, and they don't even bother talking to me. And I was just here well, that's too bad, but you're very fun to talk to, and I enjoy talking to you. And I mean, of course I wasn't lying, because I did. I really thought that she was an interesting person. And it just kind of made me sad, well, you guys are really missing out on somebody who's really interesting and has a lot to say. You could say that, well, she really did mean a lot to me as a friend and kind of as a mentor in a way. Being that she did kind of share her secrets with me in music, or not music, well, I guess technically kind of music and audio, but also video as well. So that kind of helped to make my own videos a bit better. And likewise, I mean, well, as I've commented in the past to some people, the more I think about it, the more she kind of inspired my creative spirit. Because before I met her, I thought about kind of getting into drawing and making artwork, but I just didn't have the motivation to do it. But then, as weird as it sounds, when I met her, I suddenly had this motivation, like, I wanted to show her this stuff. And which was why, like, around the time when I got super into Final Fantasy 13, I even started kind of doing, like, in the same style of the two Natalie drawings, I would make the characters from the game. And she actually really loved those. And it really meant a lot to me that she liked them that much, since, well, in a sense, it kind of gave me that satisfaction that, well, in a sense, I guess I'm kind of doing her proud, and I'm sort of repaying the favor, in a sense, for how she inspired me to kind of get into the drawing in the first place. And let's see, I guess at that point it was 2011. Around that time, I also posted, like, well, I haven't been on DeviantArt in forever, so I don't know if they still have this feature, but you could make these sort of journals. And on that day, I kind of had this encounter with this kind of bratty girl by the name of Maddie. And I just kind of expressed that, like, near the end of the journal, like, how that girl kind of got on my nerves and whatever. And at about the same time, I think like about 2 days later, Maddie kind of made her own journal about how it was basically like the awkward moment where someone you talk to is talking about someone with your name or whatever, and they don't know. And when I read that, I'm like, uh-oh, did I just like, oh great, I'm an idiot, aren't I? But then what else is new, right? So me being me, I was like, oh my god, I'm so sorry, please don't get mad at me. I totally did not mean that against you. I was just talking about this other person by the name of Maddie who was kind of getting on my nerves, and it's like, you could never make me angry, so please, I'm so sorry, don't be mad at me. Honest, I'm seriously sorry here. And, well, she responded to me and she was like, no, it's okay, I understand. I probably should have told you ages ago anyway, but my name is Madeline, or Maddie as my friends call me. And then that's when I responded, like, okay, well, I guess in that case, if it ever comes up, my name is Daniel. So I guess at that point was when we kind of sort of, again, we reached this sort of level of trust and honesty with each other. And of course, I mean, it was kind of embarrassing, like, oh my god, I'm so sorry. I didn't realize that that was your name. And of course Maddie was, I mean, it's a common nickname for a girl, you know. But of course the girl that I had been talking about was named Madison, but she called herself Maddie. Of course, Larsa, Madeline, that was her name, and in my opinion, I thought that that was kind of a pretty name. In fact, so pretty that even now, I still wonder if I am butchering her name, because it has like this sort of French pronunciation. Going off on a tangent for just a hot second here. In late 2010, I kind of found myself getting a bit more noticed by the Cascada fandom, thanks to my YouTube videos and my artwork on Twitter, by other fans and by Natalie Horler herself. Like, for her birthday, Natalie Horler's birthday on September 23rd, I made like these sort of collages. Once again, kind of inspired by something Maddie had done earlier, for the same reason. And I shared it to Twitter, and Natalie liked it, as well as a bunch of other fans. And, well, eventually that's how I kind of started meeting other people in the fandom, including another girl by the name of Maggie, not to be confused with Maddie, whose name I still didn't know at that point, so I'm sorry if, well, I know some people tell me that I should probably, like, try to experiment with doing a script for my videos, but I don't know, I just feel like it's easier for me to just kind of think and talk versus sitting down and then trying to think of a script. especially because my ideas and thoughts kind of just, like, in a sense, I just can't really control, like, when I think about that stuff or whatever, you know? So, it's easier for me to just kind of think and talk it out as I'm recording versus sitting down. And that's not to say that I wouldn't consider doing a script, but that's only if I have a concise idea in mind. And this video in itself isn't really too concise. But anyways, so 2010, I started kind of getting more noticed by the Cascada fandom in the United States and in the United Kingdom. Maddie was actually on Twitter, although she told me that she never really used her Twitter account that much for anything outside of following the Cascada Twitter. And a lot of the times, well, she told me that she was very forgetful with her passwords, so there were times when she probably wouldn't be able to log in because she forgot. And even then, she told me that she was more active on YouTube, DeviantArt, Blogspot, and Tumblr. I wasn't really that into Tumblr since I didn't quite understand it, but she did share her Tumblr blog with me. She ran one that was Cascada dedicated, as well as her personal one that was known as Kane Highwind Fangirl. Because at that point I learned that Final Fantasy IV was her all-time favorite game, and she was just a huge fan of the Kane Highwind character. She did kind of like leave the door open for me if in case I ever did want to speak to her on Tumblr, and I told her, well, I'll think about it. I don't quite understand Tumblr, but maybe one of these days I'll give it a try. So, I mean, I left the door open for that as well, to join onto Tumblr at a later time. But anyways, going back to a few things. So yeah, it sounds good, you know, that I'm kind of more involved in the fandom and I found all these new friends and whatever. Little did I know, big mistake. No, not a few years, but time would pass on, and I think in 2010 was when Natalie would have to have like surgery on her vocal cords, which like me and Maddie were definitely like, oh my god, what's gonna happen to her? Like, let's hope that she's gonna be able to keep singing again. And she even told me something like how her friends would kind of make fun of that to her as well, because they knew that she was a huge fan of the singer, even kind of joking that she was in love with Natalie and wanted to hook up with her and whatever, something like that. And like she would basically just like, you know, kind of like the idea of just put your fingers in your ear and be like, la la la, I can't hear you. Like that's kind of how she felt about it. And well, it was around this time that like my mom and my aunt were kind of familiar that I did talk with this girl. Because at that point, around that same time when Natalie was having the vocal surgery, my mom and I went to go see my aunt when she was living in another city. And my aunt let me like borrow her laptop for anything that I needed. And well, I would try to see if Maddie had messaged me at all. And around that time was when like my mom and aunt were kind of curious, and I just told them, well, this is who I'm talking to. And like my aunt was especially curious about her, like, you know, like all these things about her, like where exactly she was from. And so I would kind of talk about little details about Maddie, well, Larsa, that had the details that she had shared with me at that point. And of course, well, my mom was kind of cool with it, so long as she knew that like I wasn't talking with anyone who was, you know, kind of bad. But of course, Maddie wasn't. And like I said, if anything, and I think I said it in another video, but I almost think that she was probably like one of the best things to happen to me. Okay, but anyways, so kind of quickly going, I'm sorry if I'm going like back and forth so much, but so on the other end of things, I made a card for Natalie, basically like a get well card. And she even responded to me something like, "Thank you for all the lovely pictures that you send me." And on another occasion, kind of like the same way that Maddie would get made fun of for liking Cascada and Natalie, I did as well. Not just by people in my school, but also like on the internet as well. And of course, I was just so young and naive, and I just did not like it. Like, they basically kind of made fun of me, like, "You want to marry Natalie, and you're in love with her," and I'm like, "No, it's not like that. Like, get off my case already." That at some point, I think I even, like, made a tweet to Natalie, basically kind of saying something to the effect of how I was being bullied by people with all these things that weren't true, and like, they made me feel like if Natalie the singer had ever met me, that she would probably be repulsed by me, and I even said, like, well, like, I'm so sorry that I've ever done anything to annoy or repulse you with all my stupid pictures and whatever. A few fans they kind of supported me, saying, like, well, has Natalie herself ever told you that she hates you or that she hates what you do? And, like, no. A few days after that, which was ironically close to my birthday at the time, she posted, like, this sort of quote, and it's one that I hold near and dear to me even to this day. Even to the point of using it as my high school yearbook quote. I can't quite remember it fully off the top of my head, but it went something like, "Other people's opinions of you do not have to become your reality. For when there are no enemies within, the enemies outside cannot hurt you." Which basically means that as long as you have confidence in yourself, and your own self-confidence is strong, and you don't have like you're not like fighting within yourself, everyone else aside from you and all the words that they say to try and hurt you have no power. So long as you have confidence in yourself, you define who you are. No one else does. And that quote meant the world to me because, as I mentioned, I had been bullied a lot by my father, by former friends, by stupid random strangers. It was all very hurtful to me, and at that point my self-confidence was kind of at an all-time low. So in a sense, to hear someone that I looked up to as a role model kind of say this, it really meant a lot to me. Obviously she didn't like tag me in her tweet update, but some of the people that were aware that I had reached out to her kind of said that, like, "I think that she's trying to talk to you." Like, in a sense, considering how my reaching out to her revolved around the subject of bullying and people saying all these nasty things to me to make me feel like, just to make me feel awful. And then she comes in and makes this quote about basically how to essentially shrug off the bullying and all these hurtful words because they have no power. Like, it all kind of lined up in the end. So, in fact, I think even Maddie kind of saw that when I told her, and she was kind of amazed at that. But anyways, well, at least around that time, a lot of the other members of the fandom were kind of sort of cool with me. Maddie kind of stayed off on the side, and she didn't really get involved with them. Because, like I mentioned, she wasn't really that big on Twitter, and she would never ever dare try to get onto Facebook. Which, I mean, that was totally okay. Because, I mean, I understand, you know. And in a sense, I almost think that that was probably like, in a sense, well, that she was probably very smart to kind of do that. Well, in the sense that she didn't really get too involved with other members of the fandom. Mostly because I know that she told me that she was very shy. So, I guess in a sense, when I would try to clumsily talk to her back in those days, it wasn't so much that she thought that I was an annoying idiot or whatever, but it was because perhaps maybe she was too shy to respond to me, especially maybe because I was a guy. She did tell me that she was a very shy person, especially around guys. Which, I mean, I felt a little bit bad about because, well, again, I didn't mean to ever make her uncomfortable if I did, and luckily she told me that that was never the case, but that, talking to me did kind of help her a little bit. Kind of jumping back a little bit, forward again. So my mom and my aunt already kind of knew about her, and they kind of liked the idea that I did sort of have like this pen pal, sort of. And then, well, I guess 2011 kind of came around, and a few things that I heard about Natalie kind of selling herself shameless kind of irked me in the wrong way, to the point where, like, I even made this sort of... This was back when YouTube still had the 10-minute time limit, and so I made like this 13-minute kind of video, which is basically me right now talking and like getting all these thoughts out about these possibilities of Natalie kind of selling herself shameless, especially in such a way that I really, really did not like. And that was what especially caught the attention of the fandom, because they saw that, wow, this guy really, like, he's a really huge fan and he really looks up to Natalie as a role model. That was especially how I caught the attention of Team Cascada UK. And I had once again kind of caught their attention again when I tried to enter a contest of theirs, which I was one of 3 winners, in which I got a special CD, which I still have. These rumors kind of popped up again later on in 2011, and it really just irked me, and I kind of expressed that on my Twitter, which a lot of fans did not like. Previously, I kind of sort of irked some people because I didn't like some of Cascada's newer music, but then this kind of happened where apparently, oh, so you don't agree with everything that Natalie does, you're not a real fan. Like, seriously, okay, so just because, like, I don't agree with something that makes me a bad person or whatever. According to Team Cascada UK, apparently it did. In fact, it was the 2 of them that even threatened me over Twitter and Facebook, which deeply scared the hell out of me. And like I said, back then I was just so young and stupid. Like, even now, thinking back, I'm here like, oh my god, like, what the hell was I thinking back then? And so, they scared me, like, so much that at that point, like, I kind of tried to close off my contact with a lot of them. Even, like, on DeviantArt, I even kind of said that, like, yeah, I'm kind of gonna secede myself from the world, and I don't want to talk to anyone anymore, so... Yeah, it's because I'm tired of all this bullying, I'm tired of all these mean people coming after me for basically just expressing my opinions and whatever. I'm just tired, bye-bye. And, well, before I completely closed myself from everyone, that girl that I mentioned by the name of Maggie actually reached out to me. And she was kind of there with me the whole time, kind of trying to sort of comfort me and make me feel better, because, I mean, seriously, I mean, what do you do when someone literally kind of threatens to, like... Well, they said that what was I trying to say? Those girls said that I deserved a good beating or whatever. And, well, at least to me, I was here like, what do you even do with that? Basically, as someone so young and whatever. Like, what do you make of that? Maggie was another girl that lived in the United Kingdom, and she kind of caught on to how they were treating me. And then, of course, I told her a little more details about what they had said to me, and, like, understandably, she was outraged. She had no idea that they were so low, like, low class, and just... Like, seriously, like, what is wrong with you to go after someone like that? And that's when she kind of came up with the... Like, she kind of made the realization that Team Cascada UK kind of treated other Cascada fans like sheep in a way, and if you were a free thinker, then it's like, you're a heretic! We must run you out of town like an angry mob! That sort of mentality. And from that point on, Maggie became another one of my best friends. She was this sort of, well, when I think of her now, she kind of reminds me so much of Sayori from DDLC. She had this very sort of happy, upbeat kind of attitude, and she was very cute in the way she would talk. Like, I just loved talking to her as well. And which is why it kind of made me sad and a bit confused when I found out that she was going through depression. And like sometimes I would reach out to her and she wouldn't respond to me, or she would take longer to respond. And it kind of made me worry about her sometimes, just because. And well, as I mentioned, at this point, I kind of didn't totally understand how depression could affect someone, despite that I was kind of going through depression as well ever since the loss of my grandmother. But eventually, kind of when I did start putting two and two together, I realized, like, yeah, in a sense, the way that it affects me, it's kind of different from the way that it affects her. There is some overlap, like how we sometimes both kind of close ourselves off from people when we're not feeling all that great, and we might both seem kind of irritable depending on what sort of moment you catch us in. But so in a sense, like, Maggie was kind of like my Sayori in a sense. She was my best friend aside from Maddie. And I remember that at some point I did kind of talk to her about Maddie and how I thought that she was this sort of amazing person. And she did kind of think like, wow, you're right, she kind of does. And I really love like her artwork and whatever. I don't know, at some point I kind of reciprocated that and I mentioned Maggie to Maddie. And I do remember that at some point she referred to Maggie as this friend of yours, so I'm not quite sure how Maddie took it, just because, well, considering we replied through, like, messaging, and I couldn't exactly pick up on the tone of her voice and whatever, so in a sense, I don't know if, like, I made a boo-boo or not, but, I mean, that didn't make her stop talking to me. What did actually scare her, though, was going back to my sort of decision to close myself off from talking to people on the internet. That actually kind of scared her to the point where, for some reason, she thought that I was angry at her, and she didn't want me to go away. When I read her sort of private message to me, I was like, oh my god, I totally didn't even think about you. I was just so angry and hurt that I just didn't want to I didn't want to have anything to do with anybody, but I totally forgot about my best friend, Maddie. And I even told her, like, no, I'm so sorry, please, no, don't feel that way. You didn't do anything wrong. It's me. I was just so angry that I just said all this stuff when I wasn't totally thinking, and I didn't mean to hurt or scare you, so please, no, don't worry. I'm not gonna go anywhere, and you'll still be able to talk to me however much you want, so please don't feel like any of this is your fault, because it's not. It's just some stupid people. And then that's when I kind of went into telling her, like, exactly what happened. And, well, she didn't agree with that, for sure. In fact, I remember she even called, like, one of the guy Cascada fans who kind of attacked me, like, a loser who had no real life. Just because, well, I guess I won't really go into why she called him that, but just take my word for it. And, well, she told me that, essentially, to kind of don't listen to those people, and that at the very least that if I ever needed to talk to her, that she would be available. and that she would try her best to be there for me. And I told her the exact same thing back because, like I said, she really meant a lot to me. And it was at that point that I was kind of starting to feel a little bit different about her. I just I couldn't really understand why though at that time. But I just had the thought of I never wanted to ever see Maddie sad. Even though at that point I didn't know what she looked like, I always wanted to imagine that she was smiling and happy wherever she was. And so that was kind of when we sort of made that promise to each other to be there for each other and have and give each other support in a sense. Like, I would always try to be supportive of her, and she was always supportive of me, and we would look out for each other. Which is why, like, as time passed, and, like, I remember when there was some rioting out in the United Kingdom, specifically in London, I immediately, like, reached out to both Maggie and Maddie, because it really scared me, and I even thought, like, oh my god, where are these two right now? Are they okay? Please. Like, please tell me that they're okay. Maggie was apparently, like, one of the one who lived closer to London, so... But thankfully she was okay. Maddie, however, lived far away from the rioting, and she told me that at that time, there really was nothing happening, but she found it very endearing that I cared so much about her that I immediately, like, reached out to her because I wanted to make sure that she was okay. And I told her, well, it's because I was worried and I wasn't quite sure, like, where you were or what was happening. And I just I saw some of these headlines and a bit of these articles, and it just freaked me out, and I immediately thought of you and Maggie. So, and I mean, that's the truth. So she did think it was at least endearing that I did care so much about her. And likewise, Maggie did as well. At some point, she even said that she thought it was very sweet that I cared a lot about her. Probably more than some of her IRL friends did about her. Which kind of made me feel like, oh, thank you, I guess. Like, I mean, I had never had a girl tell me, like, call me sweet or whatever, or tell me that they appreciated that I cared so much about them. But at that point, I guess you could say they were both two of my most important best friends, and two of the best things that ever happened to me. And I guess this will be the end of what I'm going to call Chapter 1. Especially because it's getting a bit later, and yeah, I think I'm getting a bit emotional, I'm just getting emotional just remembering, like, how bad I felt scaring Maddie, and just how scared I was that, like, I didn't want to imagine her in danger, her or Maggie, and yeah, so I guess even now you can see that it just really shook me in a way. Just the thought of losing the both of them and not being able to ever talk to them again. But anyways, well, I'll continue with the next sort of chapter. I guess I'll call it at another time. So if you managed to make it to the end of this video, thank you all for watching, and I will see you guys next time with whatever else I do. Stay golden, and later, folks.